for your time and your interest in this very important webinar. We are in a time of crisis and desperate need for immigration justice. And so we really want to thank you for joining us today. We want to recognize that there are many very unsettling, as you know, when you turn on the news, you will hear a lot of statistics that are quite daunting and traumatic. The zero tolerance policy has separated over 3,000 children from their parents. And now about 500 children still need to be reunited. And so in this time of crisis, a lot of people in our communities feel very, very traumatized, and they don't know quite what to do. And so we really wanted to hear from the ground of what is happening in your communities, and also to see the actions that are being taken by our Mennonite communities. So we are very honored to have 5 very important leaders in our community share with us what has been happening on the ground. We also want to recognize that our time is very limited, and so we will be giving only about 15 minutes to each of our speakers. And so this is not an in-depth look at what is happening, but getting a pulse of what is happening around the nation. So let me introduce you to our first speaker, Anton Flores. Many of you know him. He's the co-founder and the resident of Casa Alterna. Anton, what is going down there in Georgia?
Yes, hey, thanks, Sue, for allowing me to be a part of this gathering. And I look forward to also reconnecting with many of you and learning and being inspired from each of you, and just knowing that we are all connected to one universal family and one universal kingdom. So a little bit about us, and I'll start with just a story. Last night in our community that I'll describe in a bit, we hosted the mayor of our town, of about 30,000 people, and also the head of our county archives and other community leaders. Some of our neighbors from Guatemala and Mexico prepared a meal, and I gave those who visited us a tour of our community. I told them about how, at least from somewhere around the 1920s to the 1960s, this little enclave cul-de-sac that we live in was called Goose Holler. It was a Black community in a time where African Americans were limited in the places where they could choose to live here in the South. It was a place where folks lived in substandard housing and with no running water and no electricity. So obviously this was at the heart of this whole time in the South, where folks lived separately and unequally. But in the center of our neighborhood, we were actually one of 3 African-American enclaves, and we were the center of the 3. And in the center of our community was a church. And the church, interestingly enough, its name was Welcome Church. Now, in 1952, Welcome Church was destroyed by fire. The white led newspaper in 1952 printed an article, a very brief article about the church fire, but just said that there was no known cause. In our speaking with an expert, a woman who lived here during that time, an 85-year-old Miss Maddie Body, she told us that the neighbors always knew that it was arson. So that was the history that we brought to these individuals. Now today, if you come to our neighborhood, we are a community of about 28 families, most of whom cannot access utilities in their own name, and who live very marginalized live a very marginalized life. Over 90% of the residents in our little community probably the adults originate from Guatemala, and all of them except for our family originate from somewhere in Latin America. But much like Goose Holler, back in an era of segregation, we are also a thriving, faithful, industrious, hardworking community. And we are filled with hope. And so I want to just talk a little bit about some of the ways in which in our 16 years of existence as Alterna, we have tried to be strategic and yet incarnational. And I think the ways in which we have tried to be strategic is by being incarnational. We talk about Casa Alterna as being a house of hospitality that is devoted to faithful acts of mercy and justice. And so in that statement, you've got three key words that I think have guided us well. And rather than me give you kind of a cookie cutter, just do this, I want to just kind of explore those things a bit with you. What does it mean to inspire as a faith community, as a congregation? What does it mean to inspire and invest in works of hospitality, and as it relates to the opportunity to be with immigrants and seek justice? What does it mean to inspire and invest in works of mercy? And what does it mean to inspire and invest in lives and acts of justice? So for that, it's meant many different things. I mean, for us, this notion of hospitality has meant a literal displacement, a relocation for us, in that we now live and rent from the same landlord as our neighbors do, in solidarity. And I'll tell you, in this past year, I have learned so much about this notion of hospitality. I have learned so much more about what it means, especially in this current climate and under this current presidential administration. One of the things that I'm realizing right now is I have to also not just take a posture that says, doggone it, I'm going to do justice, but I have to hold in tension this concept of doing justice with doing no harm. And this is a very interesting tension that I am holding, because the very first month, and when we moved into this neighborhood, again, Alterna has existed for 16 years in this town, but we moved into this cul-de-sac just a year ago. Within the first month of living here, I was already awoken to the fact that we would have immigration agents, plainclothes immigration agents in unmarked vehicles waiting at the opening of our cul-de-sac. And as our elementary age children, of which, by the way, we have about 45 children under the age of 18 that live here, as the elementary age children are waiting to catch their bus, and their parents are going in hired vehicles to go to work, those vehicles were being pulled over by immigration officials and in plain sight of their children. And the drivers, though, tended to be folks like me, U.S. citizen, or somehow have some type of legal status, had access to a Georgia driver's license, but were being pulled over for less than clear explanations, such as we're conducting an investigation, or you didn't make a proper stop. And it was a very precarious and traumatizing experience for the entire neighborhood, as children then would not go to school, as parents would not go to work, as some parents were sadly detained as a result of that. And so for me then to be here as this U.S. citizen, what I wanted to do was rally the troops and just and file complaints and raise a whole bunch of ruckus. Not saying I didn't do some of that, but I have learned, though, that I have to follow the lead of my community and my neighbors and embrace my own impotence and embrace my own powerlessness. And I think that is something that I've learned in terms of my faith journey, is that this life of incarnational solidarity, not just theme or cause-driven advocacy, requires of us to displace ourselves, to embrace a level of impotency, but to also find the joy and the resiliency in the communities who aren't just dealing with a situational crisis. They are dealing with layers and layers and layers of sin, structural sin, and injustice. So again, I just go back to the question of, what does hospitality look like? What does it mean to welcome the stranger? what does it mean to displace ourselves so that when Charlotte and I moved into this neighborhood, we not only had the beauty of welcoming the stranger in the broader sense of our city's context, but we had the opportunity to be welcomed as the stranger. Because now in this neighborhood, the culture is very Guatemalan, and we are the strangers. And so we were the ones who were being lavished with tamales as greetings. We are the ones who are learning what it's like to interact with adults who are working 50, 60 hours a week, who are tired. We are the ones that are, learning what it's like to have the children in our neighborhood see us as a part of their extended family, and how we adapt and how we embrace that welcome as well. As we look at what's going on in the United States today, and I just want to make sure that we don't just see this as some type of acute crisis. It is a chronic situation that has flared up in a very heinous way. But family separation has happened from the moment someone is forced to migrate. It happens the moment someone says goodbye to their sending community because of whatever the push factors might be, whether they be political persecution, whether they be economic repression, whether they be our drug policies, whatever those reasons might be. Family separation is always one of the casualties of unjust forced migration. So in that though, but in this particular moment, I mean, some of the things that we are seeing as needs are that while here in Georgia, we are having some of these families who had been separated and have been reunified. One of the situations that we have here, and kind of one of the outpost communities, is that these families come and maybe they're not detained any longer, and they're placed in what is called as an alternative to detention. But this alternative is very burdensome. Just today, one of our volunteers provided transportation to a gentleman who had to do his check-in. He's on an ankle monitor, and he has to check in sometimes once or twice a month, and has someone come visit him up to once a week in his home. So those are days that he is not able to work. If in our community, to get to Atlanta for those check-ins, he would have to miss a day's wages, plus pay $120 for someone to drive him round trip, plus deal with just the stress and the fear accompanied with every time he has to report to the ICE field office. So we are finding that transportation assistance for those individuals that are being reunified or have a pending asylum case going on, that transportation is a wonderful way to accompany someone and to be a part of alleviating the stress that complicates that because of the economics, because of the legal issues, and the fact that we do not provide due process. So most of the individuals do not have any legal counsel accompanying them. Beyond that, again, our model has been one of houses of hospitality, whether that's within a community, much like where we are now, or whether that's like El Refugio at Stewart Detention Center that we helped found in 2010. Our goal is to always inspire folks to take that call of hospitality pretty literally and incarnationally. And so we love the Catholic worker model of houses of hospitality, and really do see that in the sense that with that hospitality, that everyone who comes into our door, we see them as though they were Christ in the distressing disguise. In closing, I just want to come back to our neighborhood and talk about something that took place, that another reason why the mayor and the head of our archives was here last night. And that is because this summer, with the children of our community, we held a 2-week freedom school. We called it Camp Libertad. Libertad is Spanish for both liberty and freedom. And it was in that camp that we discovered this history together about Goose Holler and about who it was that had lived on this land. We went all the way back to the creeks and the woodlands, but then we talked significantly about those who lived here when it was Goose Holler. And it was the children of our community who went before the city council and the mayor. Probably the average age of the 3 children that spoke was about 12 years old. And they were the ones who gave an impassioned speech about why we needed to recover that history and recognize that history. And now they have been a part of developing the small lot of land where Welcome Church once sat. And we're collaborating with the city and with Welcome Baptist Church, which still exists in another location. And we will soon be unveiling a park that will simply be called Welcome Park. The tagline for Alterna is that we believe that love crosses borders. And so in those 3 words of love crossing borders, we try to encapsulate everything that I've talked about, from hospitality to mercy to justice and now to welcome. So I thank you all for allowing me to be a part of this, and I look forward now to learning from everyone else.
Next, I want to invite Sandra Montes Martinez. She's the pastor of Monte Horeb Mennonite Church in Dallas, Texas. She's also the moderator of Iglesia Mennonita España. And she will tell us kind of what is happening in her neck of the woods, and as well as larger churches in the IMH, of what is happening in the larger churches as well as locally. Sandra, would you like to share with us what is happening?
Sure. Thank you so much, everybody that is connected this afternoon. I think this is a very important subject that concerns all of us. Is a matter of the church, and we are in a stage of emergency at this point. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you some of the stories of the community, local community, and the broad community of the Hispanic churches. As you all know, and some of you work with Hispanic communities in your local settings. This is like a matter of emergency at this point. As a pastor of the local congregation, I am dealing with this firsthand. We have 2 families in our congregations that are being affected directly for the situation of the family separation. The most recent one is the Castañeda family. We have one of our church members has been here in the United States for 30 years. She left Guatemala because of the economic situation, and she left in Guatemala a daughter. At that point, she was 6 years old. And Hermana Emilia remarried in the United States. They make another family, have other 2 kids here. She still is undocumented after 30 years been living in this country. And she make, good standing citizen, pay her taxes and try to do the best she can. But still she have the pain that for 30 years she haven't seen her daughter. Well, her daughter had been trying to come to the United States for different reasons, tried to apply for a visa. 5 times she was denied for a visa to come to the United States. And her daughter is now married and have a 17-year-old son, a 13-year-old son, and 9-year-old daughter. Her older son is being persecuted by gang members in Guatemala. And she decided, to come with the older son and try to seek asylum in the United States because of the situation of her older son. His name is Eduardo Castañeda. Well, they tried to do the right thing. They went to the embassy to apply for a visa and was denied. And they take the risk to cross Mexico and come to the United States to reunite with her mother and grandmother of Eduardo. When they came to the United States, to the border, they was detained, and they made the application for asylum, and they was separate at that time. Eduardo was 3 months before he was turning 18. That was the urgency that he can bring Eduardo to the United States to be away from gang members in Guatemala. Well, they said they separate the mother and Eduardo, and they was waiting for him to turn 18 in order to be deported like an adult and be treated as an adult. We tried many as a church, and their parents tried many resources, they hire a lawyer. The church helped with the expenses for the lawyer, and the case worker, the manager case, said, well, we gonna retain him until he turn 18 so he can be processed as an adult and be deported. We mobilized many different resources with the MCC and with other non-profit organizations that advocate and have legal services for immigrants. And it was a really hard case because we were running out of time because Eduardo's age. He turned 18 being detained for immigration, and he was sent to an adult detention center to be processed and deported. We didn't give up. We use all the resources available, and we pray. We pray a lot as a community, and we mobilize many churches in the area to pray for this case. Finally, I think it was God's intervention because it was really a lost cause because he turned 18 already, and he was already in line to be deported with his mother. And he was released 2 weeks ago. We collect the money because we pay over $7,000 in fines and legal services for him to be released. He's now with his grandma. When you talk to Eduardo, the first thing he says is, thank you. Thank you, because I was really afraid in those detention centers. It was less afraid when I was with the younger kids, but when they moved me to the adults, I was really, really afraid. I cry in silence, he says, but I'm a man, so I need to be strong for my mom. And you can see the fear, you can see the terror on that kid to be treated as a criminal when he was just a kid trying to run from the very situation that he came to find in the United States. We thank God for the people that help us and to collect the money and the resources, legal resources, to be able to help Eduardo and his mother. His mother was deported, but his purpose was not to stay here. His purpose was just to bring Eduardo, to save him from the gangs and from the pandillas in Guatemala. So her purpose was complete. So she said, well, now I can be deported, no problem. I just want to save my son. So this is the things that we deal every day as a pastor. And I'm not the only one. And many of the congregations here in Texas and around the United States are dealing with similar cases. We have another case in our congregation, Bunny Morales. She was pregnant, and her daughter, 4-year-old daughter, she heard that they're not giving asylum and they separate the kids. So she decided to cross the border and just cross the river. She was for 6 hours with the water up to here, carrying her little daughter in her shoulders, so not drowned, and she'd been pregnant. She just gave up and decided to turn herself to the immigration. At that point, they were separated from the 4 years old daughter, and they put her in what they call the freezer box. It's a very cold cell. And since she was pregnant, they let her go after 4 days, and they bring her daughter back, and we was able to collect the money to pay for the fine, and she was able to be here after 4 days. Eduardo spent 3 months in a cell, in a jail, in a detention center, waiting for the process when he was released after 4 days. But the fear, just imagine yourself, be in a river, holding from branches, being pregnant, and a 4 years old on your shoulder. Just because the conditions on her country, Guatemala, wasn't bearable for her. She's a young girl, she's 22 years old, and she was just looking a better life for her and for her daughter. This is just in my local congregation in Monterey, here in Dallas, Texas. I can spend all this time telling you stories, real people, real names. They are suffering from being separate. They are trying different ways. Many people say, why they don't look for legal ways? Well, they try. They came to the border looking for asylum. Well, they've been forced to go through, put them in harm's ways to try to cross the border. We have families that apply for family petitions and been waiting for years, for 8, 10 years. Well, their kids are running out of time because of the situation in their countries. They're not come here because they want to go through this. I hear many times the question is, how can a mother or a father can put their kids through that? It's need. They have a need. They have a situation that sometimes we are not related to because we don't even imagine what it's being to be in extremely poor situations or being treated by gang members. Every church, in the Hispanic church, in the Mennonite church, have a family like this story, or somebody close to the church with the stories. We just ask for help. Advocate is the best and the strongest help we think we can do. Send letters, write letters to your representatives, to your senators, to your governments. Send email, phone calls, activate people to vote. Use social media. We have a really strong tool nowadays, social media. Send specific stories to the congressmen, to the senators, that they can see the reality of the people. They can see their names. They can see their real stories. It's just not numbers. For us, as immigrants, everybody is not just a number. It's just a name. It's a person. It's a face. It's a story behind what we see. So please be advocate for the immigrants. So please show Jesus' love, because if we can put the love before even our political convictions, I think we're really doing the right thing. In Iglesia Mennonite Hispana, we try to connect resources like MCC resources, non-profit organization resources, connecting with people that really need this legal aid. We distributed the cards, Know Your Rights, the MCC made, and this is a very important tool. Please bring MCC to your communities and open your congregations so that the people can know their rights. This is a tool the MCC give us to all of us, and it's available and it's people that bring these stories to your community. Education and advocacy is a very important tools in this critical situation we live in immigration in our nation. Thank you so much for you guys that are they're active. Thank you so much for opening the doors. Thank you so much for being active in the detention center, dealing with the families, giving the welcome to the families. Thank you so much for all of you. And let's keep working together. Thank you, Sue.
And Sandra, we want to thank you for all the work that you have done. We know it's hard to lead not only your local church, but also to represent the larger, broader church. And we just want to thank you for sharing your story, to let us, to remind us the causes of migration, to recognize the broken system that people are trying to work at getting in here legally, but because of the broken immigration system, that they truly need help. Thank you for putting faces to this dire and, as Anton said, a chronic situation. So thank you. Now we want to move to Denver, Colorado. Sarah Jackson, she is the founder of Casa de Paz. And we kind of want to know, because when people are thinking about all of these issues, we really think about the borders in the South. And Sarah, what is happening in Denver, and how are and stories of what is happening in Casa de Paz?
Hey guys, thank you for having me today and for taking some time to listen. And like Sandra just said, I think for me, one of the most powerful moments of my life was actually meeting an immigrant who was affected by our immigration policies and by immigrant detention and by our border. And it no longer was just this thing that I heard on the radio or the news or an article that I read about. It was a real person who I was having a real conversation with, and it really made me feel for them and imagine if I was in their shoes, or if my family was in their shoes, how would I want to be treated, or how would I want my family to be treated if they came to the United States. And that for me changed my life, to have a real experience. And so that's for me kind of the thing that I try to encourage as many people to do as possible, is to meet a real person who has suffered from the unjust ways that we treat immigrants. And when I first found out about immigrant detention, I had no idea that, there were hundreds of detention centers that were run by for-profit prisons that spread all over the country, that immigrants were being sent to after they had either crossed the border looking for asylum, or maybe had been living in the United States undocumented and had a run-in with law enforcement and been arrested by ICE, and then they were locked up. And just learning that people doing it the right way, they come to the United States, they ask for asylum, and then they are imprisoned, they're shackled, and then they're put into a prison where every day that they're held means somebody is getting richer, because we, the taxpayers, are paying these prisons to detain immigrants. And so that reality is not just happening along the border where immigrants are being imprisoned, but it's also happening in every state that has a detention center. And so in Denver, what happens is if somebody wins their case and they've been released, or they're released on bond or parole, and the judge has looked at them and said, okay, you are free to leave detention. And if they're released, that's obviously great news, because it means that they can get to their friends or to their family that they had been separated from, sometimes for months or even years. Immigrants can be held in these detention centers, in these prisons. And so if they get out, that's a joyous celebration. However, in the same exact moment, if that person doesn't know anyone in Denver, they are left homeless on the streets to try to figure out how to get to their final destination. And so what we do at Casa de Paz is very, very simple. It is hospitality for immigrants who have been released from detention, and for families who have loved ones who are still locked up in this prison here in Colorado. And so the way that we have come together to support and to show, like Sue was saying, Jesus's love, are very practical ways. So we have volunteers that every single day go to the immigrant detention center and pick up people who have been released and have nowhere to go. So we've made really good relationships with the guards and even some of the immigration judges and ICE officials, and they refer immigrants to us who have just been released. So our volunteers go and pick them up, and then they'll bring them to the casa, which is about 15 minutes away. And from there, we help them make a plan to get home to wherever it is that they were trying to get to before they were imprisoned. And so that looks like a meal. It looks like a phone so they can call their families and buy a plane or a bus ticket. It looks like a clean set of clothes, a bag of toiletries, and then a bed to rest overnight if their flight doesn't leave until the next day. A lot of people, though, as you can imagine, are very anxious to get home, and so they want to leave that exact same day. We just recently were able to help the moms and the dads get who had been separated from their children at the border under the zero tolerance policy, which now no longer is being done, I think. That's what we're being told, but who knows? But anyways, the moms and the dads who came and their children were separated from them at the border and then put into separate detention centers. So the parents would be flown here to Aurora, Colorado, and then the children could be sent to New Jersey or to Texas or to Florida. I mean, they were spread out across the country. And so when we found out that about 50 of those parents landed in the Aurora detention center, honestly, I didn't even have to ask our community, because of the relationships that they had built spending time with immigrants who had previously been released and their families. They knew the extreme amount of trauma that these parents were facing, and they asked, what can we do? And so together, I just put the numbers, I just came up with those numbers a little earlier today, but we raised over $45,000 to bond out 13 of those parents. And then once those parents got to the casa after they were bonded out, we immediately bought them plane tickets so they could leave that same day. Even though those tickets were a little bit more expensive, we thought that it was important for them to leave and get to their children ASAP. And I credit that response from the community. Obviously, even if you just heard about it on the news and you had this like gut reaction that this is not okay and you would want to help. But I think one of the reasons that our community responded so quickly and were able to kind of like mobilize our people so fast is because they had years of experience of being with people and sitting with people who had been torn apart from their families. So I was very proud of our community for coming together with that. For me, I think, we focus a lot on the basic stuff that somebody would need when they get to the house. And sometimes I just get like bogged down in all of those weeds. But one of our volunteers asked me if they could bring over some children's clothing for these parents, so that when the parents got out of detention, when they got to the casa, they would have the ability to look through some children's clothing and pick out an outfit for their child to wear when they were reunited with them. And that was just a beautiful reminder to me that it's a simple thing. It's just an outfit. I know they weren't even they weren't even new clothes, they were used clothes, but they were beautiful clothes because they were given out of love. And I wish you could see the way that these parents, their eyes would light up when we showed them the collection of children's clothing that we had put together, and that they could pick out an outfit for their child. One of the moms told us that her daughter was 7 years old when they crossed the border together and then were separated. And the daughter turned 8 years old in a detention center, separated away from her mother. And the daughter was completely confused as to why her mom wasn't with her on her birthday. And she called her mom and asked her, "Mom, where's my birthday present? Why aren't you here with me celebrating my birthday?" And the mother had no way to really explain that. I mean, she's 8 years old and she's wondering, why am I celebrating my birthday locked up in this building with nobody that I know? And so the mom obviously was feeling extremely guilty for not being with her daughter. And I didn't know what to do to I mean, there was nothing to do to make that situation better. That the child was still detained and we couldn't get her out. She was in the process of being reunited. There was nothing we could do, but I had remembered that we had a backpack that had been donated to us. And keep in mind, like, we normally have adults stay at the casa, but this particular backpack was a frozen backpack and it was covered in sequins. And I personally really liked it because it was very like sparkly, but I didn't think that, maybe a 40-year-old man would appreciate that. So I set it aside and I gave it to the mom so that she could give it to her daughter. And it was just this moment where the mom, you could tell that somebody out there who had given this backpack was about to make this little daughter just extremely happy, just by a backpack. It doesn't have to be revolutionary and crazy and extravagant. It can be something tiny. And so I think that if you have a detention center in your neighborhood, or if there's a prison that has a contract with ICE that detains immigrants, there's simple things that you can start doing without having a full-fledged hospitality home that is open 24/7. You can start small by becoming pen pals, by accompanying somebody to a court date, or one by one, maybe picking someone up who might need a ride to the airport or a ride to the bus station. Sometimes I think it can be a little bit daunting, but like Anton has encouraged me, because I basically copied the idea of starting Casa de Paz off of El Refugio, which Anton started. And one of Anton's suggestions to me and to our volunteers was, it's okay to experiment and to figure out what works. And if it didn't work, to know why it didn't work, and then just to move on from there, but not to be afraid of, well, what if this or what if that? Like, no, none of us have gotten it right like the very first time. I mean, at least I haven't. So I just encourage you to start something that you feel like you can stay sustained in, and that gets you excited and passionate. And I'm happy to answer any questions or to tell you what we tried and what didn't work if you get along that path.
Lastly, we are very honored and so grateful to have Tina Schlabach. She's the co-pastor of Shalom Mennonite Fellowship in Tucson, California. Tucson, Arizona. And we also have Rocio Calderon, the co-coordinator of Casa Mariposa Detention Visitation Program. And so we're going to hear a story, I think, or two maybe, of what has been happening in Tucson, Arizona. So Tina and Rocio, share with us.
We're really glad to be with you. I've visited in the Eloy Detention Center for about 5 years now. It's one of the for-profit detention centers. And Rocio and I decided to focus ours on immigration detention because that and the fear of deportation is probably the biggest stressor in our community, besides the danger of actually crossing the desert, which is also huge. And again, family separation is always a trauma for people held in immigration detention. And since this new presidential administration, the number of people in immigration detention has gone from about 34,000 people on any given day to about 40,000 people on any given day are locked up in immigration detention, simply because they're looking for safety or a better life in this country. Rocio?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Rocio Calderon, soy de Bolivia.
Good afternoon, I'm Rocio Calderon, I'm from Bolivia.
Ahora trabajo como co-coordinadora de Casa Mariposa.
I am a co-coordinator of the Casa Mariposa Detention Visitation Program.
Voy a contarles un poco de mi historia con este tiempo tan cortito.
I'll tell you just a little bit of my story in a very short time.
Estuve en el centro de detención de Eloy por 2 años.
I spent 2 years in the Eloy Detention Center.
Cuando llegué a la detención, para mí era una confusión porque yo vi una cárcel, tenía miedo.
When I arrived, I was so confused, and I was also afraid because I found myself in a jail.
Pensé que habían delincuentes.
I was afraid that I would find myself with criminals.
Cuando entré y poco a poco me di cuenta que no era así, que habían personas como yo.
And as time went by, I found that everybody there was like me.
Estaban peleando sus casos.
They were people fighting their immigration cases.
Había mamás,
There were mothers,
hijas, abuelitas.
daughters, grandmothers.
Para mí fue una impresión muy fuerte, un shock.
It was a very big impression, a shock.
Poco a poco conocí a las personas y vi el problema que había.
I began getting to know people, hearing about the problem.
Si bien mi caso fue muy fuerte,
And I had a strong immigration case,
dejé de lado,
but I left it at the side.
tomé mucha fortaleza
I took a lot of strength
y traté de actuar.
and I tried to act.
Yo tenía un llamado que tenía que hacer algo por esas personas.
I wanted to be of support to the people around me.
Habían personas que estaban separadas de sus hijos, que vivían por 20, 30 años en Estados Unidos.
I met people who had lived in this country 20 or 30 years and were separated from their children,
O mamás que estaban separados de niños pequeñitos.
or mothers that were separated from babies, very small children,
O personas que venían de lugares muy lejos, desde África.
I met people who came from countries very far away, including Africa,
Llegaban por el desierto,
people who arrived walking the desert
con los pies deshechos.
with their feet all bandaged up.
Todos estábamos sometidos
All of us were subject to
a horarios,
schedules,
a la alimentación,
food,
a la vestimenta.
and uniforms that were controlled by others.
A mí me quitaron mi nombre y me dieron un número.
They took my name away and gave me a number.
No podía hacer nada.
I couldn't do anything.
En ese momento busqué a Dios.
In that time, I really looked for God.
Le dije, tú me pusiste en este lugar y tengo que hacer algo.
And you said, here I am. You put me here in this place and I need to do something.
Me dieron la salida bajo palabra.
They offered me parole
a las 2 semanas que entré en la detención
after I was there for 2 weeks
por mi caso.
for my case.
Pero yo no conocía a nadie, no tenía comunicación con nadie.
But I didn't know anyone. I didn't know how to communicate with anyone.
No podía conseguir esa carta de apoyo para poder salir de la detención y pelear fuera.
I didn't know anyone in order to get a sponsor letter, which would have allowed me to leave detention, to fight my case outside detention.
Tomé la decisión de pelear mi caso adentro. Estaba siendo asesorada por el proyecto Florence.
I decided to stay in immigration detention and fight my case. I got some help from the Florence Project, a nonprofit group of attorneys.
Y conocí a Casa Mariposa.
And I got to know the Casa Mariposa.
Ellos me dieron mucha fortaleza.
They gave me a lot of strength.
Ya no me sentía sola.
I didn't feel alone.
Me sentía con fuerzas
I felt like I had more energy.
con las visitas que me hacían,
With the visits that they gave,
las cartas que me enviaban
the letters that they sent me,
y también me mandaban dinero para mi comisaria.
and they sometimes were able to send me money to buy things, phone cards and other items in the commissary.
Entonces, fue muy duro porque vi el sufrimiento de muchas personas.
So this experience was really hard, and I saw the suffering of so many other people.
Yo me agarré de la mano de Dios para seguir adelante,
I took God's hand to be able to go forward,
pero hay personas que no son fuertes
but there are people that don't feel as strong.
y vi muchas personas que se hacen daño a ellas mismas porque no aguantan
I
el
saw
encierro.
many people who try to hurt themselves because they just cannot stand the environment of immigration detention.
Pasé 2 largos años con mucho sufrimiento,
I passed through 2 long years of suffering
enfrentándome a cortes.
and going to court hearings.
Ujú. Me dieron una fianza al año que yo estaba en la detención.
At 1 year of being halfway through my 2 years, they gave me a bond,
Y el mismo día me la negaron.
and the same day they refused it again.
Y cuando apelé y después de 8 meses me dieron otra corte
After 8 more months, I appealed it,
y el juez me dijo que se equivocaron,
and the judge told me they had made a mistake,
que yo sí tenía la fianza.
that yes, I had been given a bond.
Fue muy frustrante esa espera
It was very frustrating waiting so long.
y gracias a Casa Mariposa
Thanks to Casa Mariposa
y ayuda de la comunidad
and a lot of help in the community,
pude salir porque pagaron mi fianza
my bond got paid and I was able to leave the detention
de
center.
$20,000.
$20,000 bond.
Eso fue porque Dios tocó corazones de las personas.
This happened because God touched the hearts of people,
Porque Casa Mariposa no tiene los recursos para pagar fianzas.
because Casa Mariposa doesn't have those resources to pay high bonds.
Salí a Casa Mariposa,
I went to live at Casa Mariposa,
viví por 6 meses
and I lived there for 6 months
hasta que pude independizarme.
until I could become independent.
Gracias a la ayuda de la comunidad,
And thanks to the help of the community,
me fortalecí
I became strong again,
y tomé la decisión de mi misión
and I took a decision that my mission
de seguir ayudando a las personas que están en detención.
would be to continue helping the people still in immigration detention.
Yo viví la necesidad de muy cerca
I lived this necessity from the inside.
y también vi la importancia que es una visita.
And I lived the importance of what it is like to receive a visit,
De saber que no estoy sola
to understand that I
y
wasn't
que me
alone
están apoyando.
and that there were people wanting to offer support.
Ahora en Casa Mariposa
Now in Casa Mariposa,
yo puedo recoger las cartas.
I go to the post office each week and I pick up the letters that people write to us
De las personas que están en detención.
of people in detention.
Estas cartas
These letters,
yo las leo,
I read them,
las puedo responder,
I write back,
entendiendo cómo estas personas están pasando.
understanding what they've gone through.
También voy a las visitas
I also visit inside the detention center now
porque vi la importancia de una persona recibir un abrazo o una palabra de esperanza, de aliento.
because I know what it's like to get a hug or a word of encouragement.
Gracias a nuestro programa,
Thanks to our program,
también recibimos cartas
we receive letters
de personas de universidades, de
from
iglesias,
groups that want to write letters,
solidarias,
people who want to give solidarity,
enviando mensajes de esperanza.
to send messages of hope.
Y eso a mí, yo encontré mi misión de la vida, es algo que me cambió la vida por completo.
This changed my life and I found my mission.
Aunque esté separada de mi familia,
Although I'm separated from my family,
pero sé que ellos están contentos ahora por el trabajo que estoy haciendo.
but I know that they support me in the work that I'm doing.
Muchas gracias y les invito a ustedes también. Y les agradezco por todo lo que hacen.
Thank you so much, and I invite you to get involved, and I thank you also for what you're already doing.
Gracias.
Thank you. And I will just add at the very end here in a couple of minutes, ways that congregations could prayerfully consider responding. And one is to get involved, like Sarah also said, with letter writing or visiting in an immigration detention center that may be in your region. And there's two websites that can help you find out more and where they are. One is Freedom for Immigrants, and the other is Detention Watch Network. Another thing that congregations can do is sign up for Mennonite Central Committee, Washington Office Immigration Action Alerts. You get up-to-date information about what Congress is doing or not doing, and they make contacting our elected officials very easy. Third, you could support any one of our communities, that those of us that have been sharing today. Supporting Casa Mariposa Detention Visitation Program, the money goes for sending money directly to people inside so that they can buy phone cards, and to supporting them when they are released. And also the work that Rocio is doing to coordinate the program. And fourth and last, if your congregation, well, not last, but one more thing you could do is if your congregation would be open to welcoming someone who is released from immigration detention that does not have a place to go, let us know that, because there are some people that don't have people here to go to. Seattle Mennonite Church has formed a support group around Marta, a Guatemalan woman who landed in Seattle, and she now has a church community and a support group. And Shalom Mennonite in Indianapolis has also formed a support group, and has for over a year now, for a woman who just left Eloy Detention Center 2 weeks ago. And that church has been supporting her family already in Indy, her children already in Indy. And now Jimena was looking forward to going to this church for the first time, and goes to the support of a whole group of people that are waiting to welcome her. So if your church community is open to welcoming someone that needs a community, let us know that, and we can help that to happen in God's time. So thanks a lot.
Rocio, thank you for sharing your story of courage and resilience, and giving us a glimpse, a very rare glimpse of what it's like to be in the detention center for 2 years. Thank you for transforming that experience to do something that's healing and that brings hope to others. So thank you. And Tina, you know you are my shiro. Thank you for always doing doing the act of God in your community. I'm just blown away by all of our speakers today. I'm glad that my video is not showing because I'm a mess. This is not just emotional, but this is the work of God that you guys are doing. And we thank you for sharing your stories. We thank you, all of you, for not only talking about radical hospitality, but for living it out and challenging all of us to do this.
So I have gotten a couple questions. And if anybody else has a question, you can use the chat box. If you go down to the bottom of your screen and click chat, you can type in your question and I'll see it and I can read it out. So this question is from Dawn Graber. She says, I wonder if Anton has suggestions of how in our local communities we could find out if we could help with immigrant court or legal transportation needs like he referenced. I heard that as a takeaway of hospitality that any of us could help with, but in my local community, not sure where to start with discerning those needs. I imagine persons would need rides to either Tampa or Miami or Orlando or elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. So I know that, for example, here in Georgia, Catholic Charities, which has an office in Atlanta, has sent out a request as they're dealing with quote unquote resettled families. So I would say a Catholic Charities or any large nonprofit that's working specifically on immigration law matters, and then also just your immigrant congregations that are in your surrounding area, because many times those will be places where they will have those relationships to know who might be in your community.
Great, thanks. And another question, is there a website that lists where all the immigrant detention centers are that could be shared? Is there a network of places like Casa de Paz that have overnight shelters at other detention centers? Where or how do we find pen pals of immigration detainees?
I'm just gonna, unless it was directed to some, okay. Yeah, there's a website that does have a complete listing of visitation programs, and a lot of those visitation programs also do pen pal programs and post-release support. So the website is freedomforimmigrants.org, and they're a national network of visitation programs, hospitality homes. And so I think if you go to freedomforimmigrants.org, there's I'm pulling it up right now, underneath what we do, there's a link called Visitation Network. And so if you click Visitation Network, it breaks it down by state, and then it will give you contact information of the people who are the leaders of those programs. And if you see that there is a detention center that does not have a program started and you are close by, the website also has resources on how to start a visitation program. So.
Thank you, Sarah. And I added that web address to the chat box. If anyone's interested, you can click on the link that I included there. And I see that Tina added another link. Do you want to say anything about that site, Tina?
Detention Watch Network is more of a policy group of people in Washington, D.C. trying to end immigration detention, but they also have maps of where all the detention centers are located, and you can find out a lot about. It's a really good website as well, and also Freedom for Immigrants is a great website, and our visitation group belongs to Freedom for Immigrants. We're under their network, as like Casa de Paz.
Are there any other questions that were sent to you, Janie?
There was one other, I think it's in reference to Tina. Again, if you can repeat the two websites you mentioned at the end of your talk again.
They're up now on the chat.
Okay.
Those are the two.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Those are all the questions I see now. If anybody else has a question, you're welcome to chat it to me.
And while we wait, wanted to just give you another resource. The Mennonite World Conference has a Peace Sunday that's coming up September 23rd, 2018. And the theme for this year is A Renewed Peace Church Welcomes the Stranger. And so there's also a resource for churches to use to bring these kinds of stories to your congregation. Another source, of course, would be to share this video and this webinar that's going to be available in a YouTube link. I think I want to go back and listen to these stories. You guys could do it if it's you don't have a lot of time. You can just show like segment of each presenters and make that available so that they can also see that it's not something that's out there, but these are people that we know in our churches that are already doing the work so that they can be inspired. That these are ordinary folks doing extraordinary things. And so I hope that that can also be a resource for all of you who are also listening and will be listening in the future. If there are no other, yes.
I would like to add the WashingtonMCC.org website with the alerts. They send call-in days, letters, petition, vigils, webinars, and resources and alert of action. So it's an excellent resource and is one source that we know very well. WashingtonMCC.org.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
That you added that to the chat box as well. One other resource I wanted to bring to your attention, if you're interested in hearing more perspectives and more stories, is the MCUSA's Menno Snapshots blog. We're going to be running a series on immigration justice for the month of August and September. So check back there. You can subscribe to the blog to get those updates, and we'll be featuring Mennonite voices in that series. So look back for some good stories. I think this week we're featuring John Garland, the pastor of San Antonio Mennonite Church. So he has a multi-part story that we're going to be posting this week. So check it out. And that's at MennoniteUSA.org. Thank you, everyone, for your time. I know this is dinner time for many of us. And I want to just really thank you for taking this time to enter into the space and to be in. I think there are some holy moments here, some sacred conversations, and saw so much here. And so thank you. Thank you for everyone who joined. We are trying to do more of these kinds of conversations. We welcome your comments, and we also want to encourage you to share this link with others once it is available. Janie will be sending that out in our official website, as well as to all of you who have participated in this webinar. This is just the beginning of the conversation, so please make sure that I think we have, please connect with Alterna, Casa de Paz, with Oreb Mennonite Church, as well as Iglesia Mennonita España, Mariposa Detention Visitation Program, and so many others. We will definitely, we will make sure that you guys get all of the websites. I think that's already up on our website. So please continue to encourage and support these organizations. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Blessings to you all.